China has accumulated quite a large amount of reserves already of iron ore, and therefore I think they are gaining some bargaining chips in terms of the negotiations to get a better price.
It's fair to say China's economy is slowing. How do you see demand for Australian iron ore playing out?
Well, the Chinese economy has been notably decelerating, especially on the demand side. If you look at the supply side indicators such as GDP, it doesn't show as much of a deceleration from second quarter to third quarter. But if you look at some of the indicators on the demand side, such as fixed asset investment, actually such slowdown has been extremely pronounced. So that is, in our view, more related to iron ore related demand. So if China, has seen this, the deceleration in fixed asset investment as sharply as from 2% to 3% on average in the first and second quarter to currently about minus 6%, and it happened in merely just 4 months or so, we think that is going to impact China's import demand for iron ore.
Well, China's also doing a lot to secure its own supply of iron ore. Is that further going to compound this issue?
Well, I'm not necessarily an expert on iron ore, but I do know that China has accumulated quite a large amount of reserves already of iron ore, and therefore I think that they are gaining some bargaining chips in terms of the negotiations to get a better price.
In terms of China's exports, they've been pretty resilient in the face of US tariffs. Has rare earths been a factor in this at all?
Well, indeed, China's exports have been unusually resilient despite people's expectation that the tariff war would probably bring it down very substantially. In fact, in the last 18 months, we haven't seen a negative export growth month. And if anything, we have seen that China's exports to the U.S. down by about 17% year to date, year on year, being largely replaced and offset by strength of Chinese exports going to ASEAN, Europe, as well as LATAM. So China's exports so far is holding up pretty well, and such resilience is probably coming as a result of the diversification of its trade export destinations.
The US is trying to break its own reliance on China's rare earths, particularly given that China has been using it as a political tool. Do you think this week's deal with Australia will help?
Well, I think that in general, the whole world is probably going to diversify away from a sole supply of rare earth from China. So I think that what has been, coming out of the negotiation between, the U.S. and also Australia could potentially, contribute to that overall picture change. Would China be happy to see that? I think China needs to use the rare earth card pretty carefully, because in the short term, this is definitely very impactful. We think that the rare earth was the key reason to reverse the negotiations between China and the U.S. back in April and May. However, if China uses more frequently and too aggressively, I think there's also the risk that the rest of the world, not only the U.S., but everyone will try to diversify away as quickly as possible. And that could shorten the time of how long China could use it as a chip in the negotiations with others.
How do you see the relationship between the US and China at the moment? I mean, there's a lot of noise coming out of the White House. Today there are reports that the US is looking at curbs on software exports to China from the US. The two leaders are due to meet next week. Do you see a resolution happening at that meeting?
Well, we remain bullish that the Xi-Trump meeting will probably still take place at APEC, just shortly before that. But at the moment, I don't necessarily think there has been any official announcement yet. We think that at this point, U.S. and China both hold each other pretty close to a more, painful point. And therefore, it's probably not far away from the time when the two top leaders sit down and probably negotiate with each other, on a grander scale, so that we're not doing one-to-one exchange of chips, but instead of kind of putting all chips on the table and talk it through. Could we see that coming in the near future? We're not sure if this would happen, sometime next week, or this could happen around the time when President President Trump has agreed to come to China for a state visit in 2026. In either case, we think that this is going to bring a de-escalation to U.S.-China trade relationship. At the moment, we think that such tit-for-tat measures are probably going to strain this trade relationship even further. So the earlier they can meet, the better it will be.
Helen Qiao, thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you.